Okay, okay. Hey. All right. So I gotta turn my light on here, guys. Just give myself. That's my intro music. All right, that's all. That's all I got for you. Hold on, let me put on my hat because my hair's a little crazy. I don't want to scare you people when I put on the camera, but I want to give you guys a quick little brief peer into my studio today. Let me see if I can get my camera squared away here. I feel like an old man, an old man. This isn't working. Here, let me try this. Boom. No, that's not working. And let me try this. And then my cameras are working. And let me try one more time. Let's go save. And let's just show video. Well, that's my, okay. So I'm going to put some sketch stuff. This is something I did the other night when I was on with some folks. I don't know who's in the room today. So if you guys want to go ahead and just like give me a shout and say, what's up? What's up? And not sup, something more a little flashier than typical. Just saying. Let me see. Let me also, I gotta set up my keyboard here because it's my handy dandy keyboard. Let me make sure that I've got, let me zoom out a little bit because you guys really deserve to see more than that. All right, so I'm just kind of showing you guys some stuff. This will obviously be a little more, hopefully reviewed more later as it becomes. This is not weird. This is my dry erase or dry eraser bag, pouch, whatever. But it's so messy. So when I put it in my pouch to carry with me, I put it in this little Ziploc bag, which is super helpful. Oh snap! Oh snap! Look who it is. What's up, Nas? How you doing, brother?
Fine. Just woke up like, I don't know, 40 minutes ago and I'm still exhausted.
Well, that happens. It happens when you're young and strong like you are. Or I've been up for hours and I'm still tired. So good luck, man.
Man, I woke up in time for the morning show and I opened up YouTube and I seen he started streaming like 12 minutes ago when I woke up, and then I somehow fell asleep again, and then I completely missed the morning show.
Yeah, I think he had just had Antonio on today, so it's all good. I think everybody's just trying to take a break. So I thought let me jump on. Let me try to share some work that I've been doing. Let me talk a little bit about what we're doing. I'm excited, man. Hey, man, I've been getting your messages and I haven't had a chance to properly respond because I want to.
It's all right.
I want to talk to you a little more. We could talk about it here, but probably not too much, I guess. But just kind of give you some of my motivations. I'm hoping to really do something sooner than later.
Yeah, okay.
And I have a couple of ideas. You gave me one of those emojis that had like a I'm thinking about what you just said face.
Yeah.
So I got to figure out what that means. I'm afraid. Let me see. I'm just going through some sketches that I have here. These are I've been messaging Mr. Doug, Mr. Tenapple.
Yeah.
That name scares me because I always want to say Tenapple, but is it? But is it? What is it?
Tenaple.
Tenaple. See, this is what happens when you're from Tampa. This is what happens. Let me see. I'm going to show you. I'm just going to make sure I can show my face at all. There I am. All right. So that's. Hi, everybody. How you doing? All right. So I'm working in my studio today, and I'm trying to show. I'm trying to get to find some work that I have because I want to talk a little bit about process. One of the things I want to do on my channel, Lafayette is over here. He says, "Oh, good, you got my doodles. Keep passing them off as yours, as agreed." And I'm almost done with the cover for issue #1 of My Wife is Possessed. Lafayette is a good buddy of mine from over on Instagram, and whenever I ever do the live shows there, he always cracks me up. I'm gonna make him my Cecil. I'm gonna figure that out. But you're just Nasser. You're like the rock star Nasser. I can't do nothing.
Sort of, I think.
You are. Hold on. I think I got to do something with my balance, my white balance, because you guys can't see this nonsense. I always have to figure this out. So there you go. That's in case. So I have, so I do have some ideas I've been playing with. I have a couple of things that I want to properly launch as an IndieGoGo campaign. And I'm going to, some of this stuff has been picked over because we're still trying some things. Like I have some things here. One of the things, it's going to sound like I'm just kissing his buttocks, but Doug has had a huge influence on me. I discovered, I actually have his books in my library. I have about 4 of his books that I've been collecting over the years. And I'm a big fan of all ages stuff. And I'm not as prudish as maybe some of the guys think that I am, but I do love my kids, and I loved them especially when they were little. Now they're in a stage now where I like them, but I want to knock them out sometimes, you know. Or I love them, but I don't like them as much sometimes because they drive me crazy. But I got all kinds of these weird little things. But then I got stuff like this, man. You seen that?
Dude, that's cool.
Yeah. So this was like a whole other thing where I have like it's a concept, but I gotta, okay. So I'm going to share it with you here because I will share this with you. This is something I've been thinking about. So recently I kind of rediscovered Hotel California.
Gotcha.
And I have this idea of turning that into a horror story. I know that it's about drugs and everything, but I'm just saying that's not how I interpreted it when I first listened to it. And so I want to do that. I want to do that. I got the Spider-Man.
When I first listened to it, I don't know what I thought it was about. It just sounded good. It wasn't until later I realized it was about drugs.
Yeah. But once somebody tells you what it's about, it kind of throws off the whole thing, right? Like now that you know that it's about whatever, crack, whatever.
Yeah,
then
or
you
weed or something.
Yeah, or LSD or chronic, whatever. Then all of a sudden it puts it in a different box. And that's one of the bad things about giving away. I'm always interested. I'm one of those same guys that wants to know more about what something is. I love to investigate further and discover something. Oh, that's cool. That means this, you know. A lot of my story ideas are again, because I'm a religious guy. I'm a Christian. I'm not saying I'm a religious guy. I'm a Christian. I'm not really religious actually, but
I'm in the same boat with you. I'm not really religious. I don't go to church or anything.
Yeah. I mean, I do go to church, but I'm not, it's a very different kind of church. It's a lot looser than what I was accustomed to growing up. But I do believe in Jesus, and I love the message of the gospel, and I love doing allegory for that. That's what I think. That's how I viewed like Lord of the Rings and Narnia. Narnia is a lot more on the nose than I would prefer. But I just think that a lot of this is one of the things I love about the whole Comicscape movement. At least how we've been talking about it is, you know, this stuff is about creating healthy, fun stories, and they don't have to be for kids. They don't really. If you go back to the I'm sure you guys have discussed this before ad nauseum, but if you go back to the roots of Marvel Comics, that stuff, I don't know that it was so much that he was writing for kids, Stan, as it was that he was writing to his limitations. And then they said later, oh, it was written for adults, but it was really for kids. Like, no, I think it's just that was the way he could write. So it is what it is. But he was great at coming up with ideas, right? So anyway, the point I'm making is I love that something can be see this monster guy? I want to do something with this guy.
Dude, I love that.
Isn't he cool? You know what this started from? Have you seen that movie? It's on Netflix. It's called what is it called? Oh no, it's not The Orb. Why do I say that? It's it's a weird Lovecraftian movie. Are you into Lovecraft?
Not really.
No? Oh, do you not like it?
I tried to read some of his stuff, and it's kind of hard to understand.
Yeah. He was like I mean, aside from the fact that he kind of invented that genre, if he hadn't invented it, I would have said that he was the Tom Clancy of that genre, because he writes like textbook stuff.
Yeah.
But what I like is, and I'm fine, I have the same kind of like difficulty with it, but I like the idea of the lore behind it. That's what I love the most. Like what he's what he is implying, that there's like another world. Damn, what was that called? Was it called The Pyramid? Shit, I can't remember. But anyway, it was the movie I'm talking about is on Netflix. I'll put it in the description later, so for people who are interested. But it was really interesting because it had a typical like old school horror thing. It had the a little bit of gore to it, and it was all what's the word I'm looking for? Practical effects.
Mm-hmm.
But there were some moments where they introduced this idea, and I don't want to give anything away. I mean, it's a typical horror movie, kind of steeped in Lovecraftian ideas.
Is it The Ritual?
No, which is The Ritual? What's that about? No, no,
I
no.
haven't seen it yet, but I know it has like monsters and stuff in it.
The Ritual. Oh no, that's the one where they're in the woods, right? It's a British movie or something.
I think so. I know it's on Netflix. I haven't seen it yet, but I've seen like a couple. I've seen some people like draw some creature from the movie, so that's kind of what I figured you might have been talking about.
I'm trying to think of. I'm just doing a quick search here, just because I'm pecking at this keyword because I'm terrible at typing. The Conjuring was good too. I like that kind of stuff. I like ghost stories. I like demon stories or demonic possession stories. I love anything. The Void. That's the name of the movie.
I don't think I've seen that one.
It's not gonna be great, man. It's like definitely for the kind of viewer that likes it to be a little cheesy. But it is pretty exciting here. I wonder why.
Let's see.
Oh, every time I try to mute my every time I mute my channel, what I end up doing is when I mean muting, I'm trying to mute the volume on my presentation here, and I keep like, why is my avatar on the screen? Anyway, The Void. So it's got this great, it has a great build up, and there's this cult, and you can kind of see this kind of was inspired from that, this like weird KKK looking thing, that they're really just a cult of these people that worship this thing called the Void or whatever. Did you see did you like have you ever been into Event Horizon?
No.
Wow,
Sorry.
really? All right. So let me ask you, Nasser, because you are the rock star, and I'm in your guys' world. I'm the new kid on the block. Tell me about you. Tell me about how you got involved in this whole thing. Tell me about why.
Like how I got into Comicsgate, or
No, well, how you get into comics first. Let's start with comics. How did you get into
oh
this?
man.
What's
Okay.
your passion about?
When I was born in '97, so I grew up with like Batman the animated series and all the reruns of the '90s X-Men and Spider-Man cartoons. I love those, and I never read a comic as a kid. I always saw those cartoons, and I wanted to be an artist. When I was a little kid, I wanted to be an artist and a writer. So I drew until I was like 10, and I never really picked up a comic at all. I didn't know where to find them. And then when I was like 10, I rage quit on drawing, and I never drew again.
Oh wow.
And then when I was but I still read up until I was like, for a couple more years, I was reading books and thinking about being a writer, but I didn't know how to write or do anything. So I rage quit on writing and reading for the most part when I was like 12. Then when I was 15, yeah, I was about 15. So this is like 2012. I started to rewatch that old Spider-Man cartoon, and then I started to watch the movies because there were a bunch of movies coming out. And then in 2013, before it was a few months before I turned 16, I just bought a comic just out of nowhere. I went on eBay and I bought X-Men #1 from the '90s,
Mm-hmm.
and I read it, and I haven't stopped buying comics since. I have
Wow.
I'm down here in the basement where I keep all my books. To the right of me, I have like 140 to 150 paperbacks and hardcovers, and then to my left, I have like 10 long boxes of comics, but that doesn't even count all the long boxes I've either given away or sold. So I don't know. So since 2013, maybe about 15 long boxes or 14 that I've owned, but I think I'm
Wow.
just down to like 10 now. But yeah.
So you got deep into it. You jumped in with both feet. You didn't. It's almost like you didn't look back after that, right?
Yep, pretty much. And then let's see. So then in okay, now we're gonna get into how I started writing again. So well, I didn't really write much when I was a kid, but I always wanted to. I just didn't know what to do. And then let's see. It's like okay, so I started reading comics. It's April 2013. So then we get to like late 2014. I was like, okay, these are awesome. I need to make my own. So late 2014, early 2015. I'm about 17 now, and I had this friend I met online, and I read some of her stuff, and it was great. I read some of her poetry, and she said
Mm,
that well, she liked horror too, and I had just gotten into horror. Um, I never liked it for most of my life,
mm,
and then now it's my favorite. But uh, so I wanted her to like show me how to write, like kind of like teach me and stuff. And she was just an online friend, but she ended up wasting my time, and I got nothing done for a long time. So from like 2015 until 2017, I got like almost nothing done. Um, so I wanted to write, but I was like never writing. And then but late 2016, I was just like, screw it. And I just started writing, not waiting for her advice or help or anything. And then, I don't know, I just kept writing and writing, and I've gotten a lot done. And, I don't know, that's just how I started writing.
okay.
So, she held me back a lot though. Like I feel I could be so much better today if I didn't try to rely on somebody. So now I try not to rely on people. Um, but then October of 2017, that was when I found Comicsgate. So almost a year ago, but I don't think it was called Comicsgate back then. I think we were just fans that were upset with how things were going.
Mhm.
Basically, it's a boring story how I found Comicsgate. I was in a Facebook group. Somebody posted a link to one of Zach's videos. I clicked on the link. I started watching Zach's videos. And I was like, wow, somebody who understands. Because
Mhm.
I thought, because I was never on Twitter, even though I had an account for like 5 years. I just never used it. And I would just buy my books, go home and read them, and that was it. I never knew what these people were like. And I just thought, I was like, well, the content is kind of lame, but I was like, I guess that's just what the kids are into these days.
The kids.
I was like, I guess that's just what people want. I thought that if it I thought if people didn't like it, it wouldn't sell. So I was like, maybe this is what people like. It's selling.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Then I found out that there was a website called Comicron, and it shows you how bad everybody does.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, so
Tell
from
me
Zach,
about
I found everyone else.
Tell me about that because well, let me say this first. I have a very similar story, and it's interesting because it seems like this conversation that we're having that's like a perpetual, what's wrong with comics thing. It's on one level, it's one of those things I would have said because I come from a very corporate background. I've worked for company for almost 20 years, and I cut my teeth at that company and that kind of stuff, and the work that I did for them. And but I was always a comic fan. Also, I mean, I've anyone that's and then we have about 7 people watching it. Anyone that knows me at all um, knows that that's where I come from. If you've been following me at all on Instagram or whatever, because I've talked about this ad nauseum, and I've had very strong opinions about stuff and about the movies and everything like that, because I grew up with these characters, right? And so on the one hand, I get that these are not my characters because I don't own them, even though I like to draw them and people like when I draw them, but they're not mine. And I had the same experience. I kept saying, but I came from an older guy's perspective, an older customer. And by the way, I have the camera on the sketch while I work, so that way people can just enjoy the doodling if they don't like what I'm saying, because a lot of people probably don't like what I say anymore. But I felt like this was a problem I thought that was pervasive, and all my guys would talk about it, and we're like, well, maybe it's just that we remember comics fondly from when we were growing up in the '80s and stuff. Like I noticed that a lot of Comicsgate stuff is looks very 90s, at least, because I think that's kind of, we're in that generation of guys now that we're all old enough now to say, I remember when it was cool, and that's when it was cool. But for me, it was especially cool in the 80s. That's where I found the
Oh
most.
man, I love the 80s. Oh, the 80s and 90s are the best comics to me. I
Yeah.
especially love the Jim Shooter Marvel era from 78
Yes.
to 87. That
Yes.
is, man, that those are some of the best stories. I think the best art is probably the 90s, but the 80s and 90s, you cannot go wrong picking up about 99% of books from that time.
Yeah, yeah, and even some of the stuff that we used to make fun of back then, because we were, my generation, we made fun of guys like Liefeld. Today, I respect him a lot, and I'll tell you why. Because a lot of people still feel like, oh, he doesn't draw feet. It doesn't matter,
He
man.
does draw feet. They're
He does.
always there, and there's like nothing wrong with them.
No, no. You know what it is that people they criticized. It's fandom hasn't really changed that much. You know, after all is said and done, it looks more severe today. But the reality is that people are just as bent out of shape about anything as they used to be. So the thing is this, though. Let me see. I'm reading. I don't have a super chat, so I'm going to read most of the chats. I can relate to that, says Argos. I don't mind revamping characters dying, legacy characters, keeping the name, but it needs to be done so that it's engaging to me. I agree. I agree with that. So, yeah, that's a great point. And what was I trying to say? Well, anyway, my point actually is that I came at it from that angle, and I said some of the same things that you were saying. That maybe this isn't my characters anymore. Maybe these aren't what I enjoy, but that kind of pushed me back into an argument I used to use early on, especially when I talk to people on my Instagram or young artists. I always say, instead of trying to change, like Argos just mentioned, changing their names or putting people in those places, if you really cared about these characters, or if you really think that this is an important move, if you really feel like there's some justice that needs to be had in the social circles with characters that need to be represented by other ethnicities and stuff, then by all means create them. And waiting for someone else to do it only made me sad, because I'm drawing this stuff all the time, and I thought, you know what, I'm still not doing what I feel like I'm meant to do. I'm doing it now, but I took too long to get here. So I feel you, man. I'm excited about that. And like you said, I started out with Zach too. Well, first was Ethan. I discovered Ethan, but I was a little afraid of Ethan because I was like,
Well,
I heard
yeah,
all
I
this
actually
stuff.
knew Ethan before I found Zach, because me and Ethan are Facebook friends, and I met him in August last year because he joined that same Facebook group that I found Zach in. So Ethan showed up, and sorry to cut you off,
No, no, go ahead, go
but
ahead.
uh, but yeah, Ethan showed up, and he was like adding fans, and I was like, oh my gosh, I was like, it's Ethan.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Who doesn't like Ethan? Who
So
doesn't
you
know
were
him?
a fan of his like that. You came at him as a fan of his work from the
Yeah,
get go.
so and
Yeah.
he didn't have a YouTube yet, um so I added Ethan. I'm like freaking out. I'm like sending screenshots to all my friends when I got the notification that he accepted. And and I was like, I don't even think he remembers this, but I messaged him. I was like, Ethan, it's such an honor. Thank you for adding me. And he's like, oh no, the pleasure's mine, or something like this. And I was just like freaking out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Do
and
you feel like your connection to, because like I listen to Tug and I
Yeah.
listen and I love that he's kind of coming at it from the perspective of the consumer, whereas we're kind of coming at it from the perspective of the creators. But
Mhm.
you're looking at it as a consumer too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you're getting involved at that point with that Facebook group, you're not even thinking about creating yet, right? You're just still entertaining the idea of being connected to them
Well,
as
I
a fan.
mean, well, I was thinking of creating,
Okay.
because, well, late 2016 is when I said, screw it, I'll just write on my own and I won't wait for help. But I still was waiting for help from that lady I told you about until
Uh-huh.
about like mid 2017. So from mid 2017 till now, I just been writing nonstop, and I feel I got so much better than I ever thought I could be. But I mean, I don't think anybody's ever going to be fully satisfied with their abilities. But
Yeah, yeah,
um,
okay.
but yeah, so I met Ethan, and I was just freaking out. And then he started doing live streams on his Facebook before he even had a YouTube. And man, he drew this beautiful Jean Grey. I wonder what happened to it, because I know sometimes he used to just give that art away.
Oh wow.
Man, and I was freaking out because I was he was reading some of the chat that you could send on Facebook, and I found out he was a Beatles fan and they're my favorite band, and I was freaking out. I'm like, Ethan, who's your favorite Beatle? He was like, John, and I'm like, that's mine too. I was freaking out. And then he made a YouTube, and I was like, I was one of his first subscribers, but I still didn't know about Comicsgate until and that group, man, they kicked me because I didn't like Black Mask. but that's a story. That's it's not much of a story.
Now, Black Mask is the company or the comic book?
Yeah, the company.
Okay, I don't know very much about Black Mask at all. I kind of bailed on comics about maybe 5-6 years ago.
Yeah,
around the time I started getting into doing. Well, that's not true. That's not true. I bailed about 3 or 4 years ago. I started to kind of just get tired of. Well, part of it was a budget thing. I kept thinking, do I really care about these books that much that I'm going every week? I become very, as I get older, I'm very conscious of my addictions, and I don't like things controlling me. So I get a little weird when it comes to like, I'm just doing this just to do it. And, you know, I have a wife and family, so I'm responsible to a different group than just my own desires, blah, blah, blah. So when I'm looking at that, I'm thinking, you know, this is something. And then that's when I started to think like, man, all the guys that I know that are creators, not all of them, but many of them don't even read comics anymore. And I wondered, why not? You know, aren't you still a fan? But even if you're a fan, you're working on it now, so you're not that crazy about what you're doing, or what anybody else, or maybe their competition, or I don't know, whatever the reasons could be. But Lafayette says my favorite Beatle is Mickey Dolenz. Stupid. Argo says the 80s is where I got hooked on X-Men, Daredevil, Batman, and that's when I started recognizing artists and writers. Yeah, man, I used to think that comics were created like by elves or fairies. I didn't know. Had no idea. It was like cartoons. I just didn't believe that was something I could do. Anyway, so let's talk a little bit about Comicsgate, because I have aligned myself with Comicsgate. I haven't been experiencing any of the garbage that some of you guys have.
Yeah, surprisingly, I haven't had much of that. Just a few times.
Yeah. And I have, like I mentioned in our chat, our backdoor chat there, that I have had some people reach out to me, but it's nothing crazy. No one's attacking me or anything like that. But tell me about, what's your definition of Comicsgate? How do you feel about it?
Oh man, I think we just want good comics. It's right? That's about it for me.
Right.
Man, I don't know why people think Comicsgate is something racist or whatever they want to call us.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I found Zach, I mean, I knew nothing of Comicsgate, and so I didn't know anybody hated Zach, and I didn't know anybody liked Zach. I found his channel, and his first video I watched was called Is Image Comics responsible for creating SJW Marvel? And I had no clue what the title meant, but I was like, I'll watch this anyways. And then I started watching more of his videos, and I was like I said, I'd never really used my Twitter. I was like, I did not know these people were that crazy. Like we have like B. Claymore is like wanting to assault him, and I'm like, wow, people say this stuff to the fans, and I was like, and you know, I just pick up good books, like and I prefer indies, even though I love Marvel to death, and I still love Marvel, but and I do read a lot of Big Two stuff, but I prefer the indies. So I just pick up stuff that it looks good and I know it's going to be good. So I was never reading like Miss Marvel. And so I seen like reviews of that stuff, and I'm like, I did not know how many bad comics there were. And I was like, and after I watched a few videos, I'm like, well, most people must love this guy then. I was like, I did not. When I first found Zach, I'm like, everyone must love this guy. He is speaking the truth. And then I found Twitter, and I was like, what's everybody's deal? I'm like, why do they hate this guy? And then same thing happened when I found Captain Cummings and Doug Ernst. I'm like, sweet, we got some level-headed guys. They know what's going on in comics. They know what's good. And then every pro I found like hated him, and I'm like, what's going on?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because we in this day and age where we have social media and we have, I think, like Mark Waid said, unfettered access, which is that's still silly. That's not quite true. I think we do have a tremendous level of access to some of these guys, but I think that it's not unfettered. You could easily just as they've been, mute them, do that stuff. Who's here?
What up, brother? Mike.
Is that Mike?
Oh,
What's up,
dude,
man?
hold on.
It's
Mike,
Mike.
talk for a second. That is a beautiful page.
Let's see that.
Oh, man.
Blah, 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 yada, yada, yada.
Dude, I
Wow.
love the hair on that.
Thank you. Is it?
Looking
you can actually see
good.
it. I was made for loving you, baby.
Oh, man.
Made for loving you.
Mike, I'm so glad you're here, man. I welcome to the Jerkmonger Show. I appreciate you, man.
Jerkmonger. Oh my gosh, I forgot you used that.
Yeah. I'm talking to Nasser about his entry into some of the stuff that we're talking about these days, and I'm definitely trying to keep it light here. I think that's important, and I know that you feel that way too. I was enjoying your Aloha Hour earlier, watching the replay. And for those of you here, we have 11 people here, so I have a very small channel. But I'm excited because I am bringing people over from Instagram crowds, and
do it.
And and I'm little by little, but I want them to kind of be educated on what it is exactly that we're trying to accomplish. Let me see. Lafayette here says, well, Nick Tyler says, I love Zach, man. His videos are great. I love Zach too. He doesn't know that yet, but I do love him. Lafayette says, Comicsgate is cool, but leave the politics out of it and talk the line of books coming out. And are you guys going to promote seahorses and strongman pills?
Yeah, I like to leave the politics out.
So the person working on the sequential page, Tyler Nickel, is asking, is Mike S. Miller. You're one of the first people, Mike, that I've ever reached out to in the professional world.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And you were one of the very few people that ever reached back. And I always appreciated that about you. This is back when early on in Facebook and stuff. And you were always super kind, man. But I was a little intimidated by you for a while. Because when you're at the shows, whenever I do catch you at a show, you're like high speed, man. You're everywhere. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's Mike Miller. There's Mike Miller. Holy moly.
You got to hustle.
Yeah.
It ain't about sitting back and waiting for people to throw money at you.
Oh, no, that's, yeah.
Although it's nice when that happens too.
Sure. So Lafayette asked the question, yep, can tell Mike's art right away. Yeah. I like to call you the cleanup man. You're just super clean. But I also want to ask you at some point about how did you get so fast? Because that's where your legend is, that you're like the fastest man in the business today.
Hold on a second.
Man, I seen Mike the other day when we were on, I forgot what stream it was. I think it might have been Ethan's, and it was like a 2-hour stream. And all of a sudden, Mike holds up this like beautifully penciled page, and he's like, "I'm done already." And I was like, "How did you do that?" it's like penciled, and there's cool details, and he's like, "I'm already done."
It's the inking that slows me down. How did I get fast? Growing up, I always heard that John Byrne drew
3 a day, right?
3 pages a day. So I'm like, oh, okay, well, that must be the standard.
3 pages a day. Yeah, but hold on a second though. I'm going to IndieGoGo real quick to get the link to your campaign, Mike. But so people can see what you're working on, because a young man named Tyler's asking. He's a good friend of mine. It's Lone Star, right?
Yeah, it's just LoneStarComic.com. I grabbed that link and then forwarded my IndieGoGo to it.
Oh, okay. LoneStarComic.com.
I don't know why everyone doesn't do that. It's so simple. Like, CyberFrogComic.com.
Did you have to have a Pixel Trader do that, or how do you do that?
Oh, you just go to GoDaddy and you buy it, and then it says what do you want to do with this domain, and it gives you the option to just set up a forwarding address. And it's like, I mean, I'm a boomer, as everyone keeps calling me.
Same here. Don't worry about it.
And so, I'm not the most tech savvy guy, which probably upset my father. He was like a pioneer in the computer industry, and I'm like, no, I don't like computers. Draw. Leave me alone.
So Mike, so penciling and inking, how many pages can you do a day?
Well, I'm slower now, not just because of YouTube, but because I've been trying to just, do my absolute best work. Whereas, when John Byrne was doing, 3 pages a day, I think their page rates back then were like $70.
Well,
something like that. It was not, you had to work a lot to make a living, and then he got stuck in that kind of a mindset for way too long. Because now, if you look at John Byrne's like commission stuff he does, and he's like taking his time and he's getting paid whatever amounts of money to just sit down and draw, and it's great stuff. But back then he was like always doing a lot of shorthand stuff and a lot of like filling up with stylization and whatnot. Not to take away from how great it was, but like when he left Terry Austin behind and started inking himself, it was like he was just doing it for the money. He wasn't doing it because it was a better product because he was inking it. Because John Byrne's not that good of an inker. Terry Austin made John Byrne. I mean, it was like, for the youngsters out there, it was like J. Scott Campbell with Alex Garner inking him. It was just this match made in heaven. And because of that, he could squirt out 3 pages a day because he would draw like, he'd have this shorthand where he'd draw a squiggly line because he knew that Terry Austin would come in there and make it this perfectly radiated, set of hatch lines or whatever. So yeah, you can get away with it. And I had this conversation with Jeff Campbell one time. J. Scott Campbell, his name's Jeff. His name is Jeff. One time, because I walked into the, I was at Wildstorm with some pages I was doing for my Savage Dragon book, and he was looking at it, and he's like, wow, so much detail and all this stuff. And he's like, how long did this take you? I'm like, like 6 hours. With pencils and inks, and he's like, well, you got it down to hours? And I'm like, why? How long does it take you? And he's like, the page takes me like a day and a half, 2 days. And I'm like, dude, you pencil so freaking tight, and you've got Alex Garner, one of the greatest inkers in the entire industry, inking you. I'm like, just drop some shorthand in there. Alex is a fantastic artist, and was back then by himself, right? He was, I honestly never understood why he was just inking. I actually like Alex's pencils better than I like Jeff Campbell's. But because I guess because Jeff's is so stylized, and I'm not into. I'm more of a realistic kind of guy, and Alex was like that too. So, but I, you have this level of an inker who knows how to do finishes, who knows how to, take things to the nth level, and you're still laboring away at every single line on every single character. It wasn't taking advantage of the situation. He could have gotten much more done much faster, and it would have looked just as good.
So are we talking about John Byrne still?
No, at that point I'm talking about Jeff Campbell and Alex Garner. But
okay,
John
okay.
Byrne,
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, as far as John Byrne, yeah, when he left Terry Austin behind, and I don't know the circumstances behind it, but I'm pretty sure it was just for the money, because I've had conversations with him on Facebook way back in the day. Oh, not Facebook, AOL.
Oh wow, you're a boomer.
Yeah, and he was yeah. I guess we don't have to get into that, but I would argue with that guy all day long. It was so funny. Because he was complaining about the money, and I'm like, and this was the 90s, so it was after Marvel and DC had already changed their pay rates, raised their pay rates, John Byrne got legend rates, which was above and beyond anything like I could have ever gotten. But you know, I'm sure it was like him and Art Adams and all the old guard stars. And he was like complaining about having to work so much to make. I'm like, dude, let me break down how much you make. Like on the freaking on the chat in front of everybody, and he like it was just silent. So he doesn't like me. Yeah, my point is, I've slowed down because I'm caring more about the end product than I am about, you know, making that deadline. But well, on this, because it's my own thing. I don't have to. The fans will be more upset with me if I squirt this out than if it's a few weeks late, you know.
So that your work is really incredible. First of all, secondly, I've always respected it, and I didn't know you worked that fast. So that's now you're like another level for me. But one of the things that I wanted to share with everybody here, especially people that are kind of discovering my channel, or I'm putting the picture back on yours, because I can't draw and talk. That's my big problem here. I always stop too long. Is I have aligned myself with the Comicsgate movement, and that's a great question. So now I'm because of some of the stuff that's gone on over the last few days, I want to kind of like at least revisit the spirit of what we're doing. So I was asking Nasser, and I still want Nasser to answer this. Like, what is the Nasser? And then I want Mike you to answer the same thing. Start off again, because we have a couple new people in the chat and the watching. What exactly is your perspective on Comicsgate, and what is it not? Let's start with that.
Well, it's not the stuff that they always talk about, that all the weirdo losers on Twitter talk about when they say we're some hate group, that we're all racist, sexist. I mean, I hate playing the minority card, but I mean, we got 3 minorities here talking to each other. There's not a white guy in sight. Mm-hmm. Well, I think Mike, you're half white, aren't you, or something like that?
There's no such thing as half white, man.
Well, you know what I mean.
No, you put a little red in a gallon of white, and you got pink.
Oh, goodness gracious!
Well, whatever.
Goodness gracious!
I know you're mixed with a lot of stuff, but I don't know. To me, it's just we want good comics. That's all I saw since I found Zach's channel and all the others in October 2017. That's when I found the whole movement, and it was just people talking about what's wrong in comics and how to make it better. So that's what it is to me. And I wouldn't call it really a political movement, even though there are some political things like how conservatives are blacklisted. But I wouldn't call this entirely a conservative movement. It's more so just people that are fed up with how comics are going.
Yeah. Someone put here unwashed hands gate. I think that was a reference to someone. That
was a reference to
something. Doug, yeah.
Were you watching that?
Yeah, I was watching. It's hilarious. Kelsey's in the chat. What's up, Kelsey? Jump in, man.
Kelsey, you have the link.
Yeah, it's in the thing. So, okay, and that's an important distinction, Nasser, because I've never, for a long time, I held back getting involved in things like this because so much of the time, I feel like we lose focus on the important things. I was very, very politically oriented for a while over the last 10, 15 years, and I found that it messed me up in terms of trying to get other things accomplished that I really wanted to get accomplished. I became that guy that argued those points versus trying to get something done. So, when you're spending all this time having these battles, I find that what I want to accomplish, falls to the wayside because everyone only focuses on those things. Now, that said, I have very strong feelings and strong views on politics. But the only thing that started to kind of like pique my interest. Okay, I see. So Kelsey says he can't come in. Don't worry, man. I'll be on for a little while. You come in when you can, if you like. But I found that it was inhibiting me. And also at the time I was in a position of leadership at the place I worked at, and I really couldn't afford to. I needed to continue to maintain the support, or at least the working relationship with the people I worked with. So I kept that to a minimum. I always felt a little weird about it because, you know, I believe in ultimate freedom, but there is a place and time for everything. And when you're being paid to produce a product, it's the best example you can be in any situation, whether you're a Christian or not, is to just do an excellent job. And it was difficult to be excellent if the only thing you cared about were some of these type of views. So I kept that to a minimum. And so here I am. Fast forward, I'm independent now. I've been by myself in my studio here for the last few years. And I start to see these videos, and I'm like, wow, these people are really some interesting comments. I started out just looking for reviews. I think what had happened is I still like video games, but I don't have the time to play them. So I used to put them on in the background and listen to other guys play them, all these gamers. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then these suggestions started popping up, and that's when I discovered Zach and Ethan. So then I heard Mike S. Miller has a channel. Like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. This is great. Right. This is like Facebook all over again from the beginning. All these people popping up. And then I started to hear that. And to your point, Nasser, I started to hear this thing. So someone mentioned earlier, keeping the politics out of it. I agree with that, but sometimes you can't help it, because anytime someone changes something, it affects. I think part of it is that it affects their livelihood. That's what motivates their anger towards the movement. And obviously they have a message they want to convey through comics, which is, I think, hurting comics. But at the end of the day, I still feel like the most important thing we can do is let's just show off how awesome these projects are, you know? Right. And so, because that's what we were saying, and that goes back to something we had mentioned yesterday, was when we get these things fulfilled and all these books are completed and they're out, that's going to change the whole mindset altogether. That's the biggest proof. What they say, the best revenge is to be successful.
Yeah.
So
that's my plan.
Yeah. So Mike, so tell me about your position on that.
Have you read whatiscomicsgate.com?
No, I have not.
I actually wrote a primer on this, on the whole thing, because I was trying to take the narrative back, because these freaking people, and I use that word begrudgingly, on the other side, they're just full of lies and invective, and their whole purpose is to destroy rather than to build up. Mm-hmm. And so they'll spread any lie they can think of to try to tear down a movement full of good people who just want comics to be fun again, you know?
Yeah.
They don't want to open up a comic book or be afraid to buy a comic book for their kids because they're going to be, you know, have some ham-fisted political message jammed down their throat.
Right. And like I have a niece that's 6, and she wants to be an artist like all kids do, and I hope she sticks with it. And I want to give her comics, but like no way am I going to give her anything off the shelves currently, because most of it's propaganda, or it's just poorly written and poorly drawn.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and the poorly written part, not so much the poorly drawn. I mean, there's still good, you know, great artists out there. But the poorly written part is so commonplace, and it's because of the meat grinder that is the comic books industry. You know, you've got. Yeah. I try to make this argument, which was not well received, about like The Last Jedi, where rather than rather than sitting around in Cabo or whatever, thinking about what would make a great story for 3 years, they slapped Star Wars on a schedule where they have to have a new movie out every year, right? And because of that, I believe, they're like, oh, well, we just picked a director. We're 3 months behind schedule, but here's your thing. We have to be in pre-production in 3 months or in 6 months. And I mean, some of the greatest movies ever have taken literally years to write, just the screenplay itself. Because you got to write, you got to rewrite, you got to edit, you got to rewrite, you got to rewrite. It's like writing is this super intensive, laborious thing if you want a fantastic script. Usually, this is the norm in Hollywood. But when you're like, here, we've got to get, this is already on the schedule for 2 years from now, get started. Then we have to do pre-production, production, post-production, all this stuff. But first, we need a freaking script. And so you're telling a writer, and here's a weird thing. I love Rian Johnson's other movies. I love The Brothers Bloom. I love Brick. Looper. I liked Looper. I didn't love it because I actually had a movie idea very, very similar to it, and that was called The Loop. But I just think he probably didn't have the time, like between Brick and The Brothers Bloom, I think was like 5 or 6 years, something like that, right? So it's like taking George R.R. Martin and saying, hey, this book has to be out once a year, so just squirt out Game of Thrones. But no, he's taking ridiculously way too long to write these things, but it's the best freaking book series out there, in my opinion.
Right.
And the same thing happens on a micro level in comic books, because rather than sitting there and saying, having these flights of fancy and these inspirational moments where you're like, oh my gosh, wouldn't it be awesome if Daredevil had this villain Bullseye who just destroyed his entire life and took away everything he loved. You come up with these great inspirational things. Those don't come up on a monthly schedule. So they're jamming out these cookie cutter corporate comics every freaking month in the hundreds. How many books does Marvel publish? In a month?
85
right?
Or something.
Yeah. So hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these things every year. And occasionally you'll have something that shines. But what you get, here. This is what it's at, right? Avengers Forever. You know that Busiek wasn't on some monthly grind when he came up with this. He probably came up with this and sat there thinking it through for the longest time and had the entire story plotted out before he even approached Marvel with it. Right? I'm guessing. But yeah, it's the same thing when you have things like Virtue and Vice. When you have that's why graphic novels are so great, because they're these inspired things. They're not get it out. Because dude, I've been in this industry for 26 years, and I hate to say it, but most of the stuff I've worked on, I wouldn't want to read it twice.
Would you say that? Let's see, how do I phrase this? Would you say that the comic medium has evolved past the monthlies and more into the graphic novel? Like one of my favorite comics is Hellboy, and Hellboy is published irregularly. At least it used to be. Now with I think they take advantage of a monthly format for BPRD. But one of the things that makes it so good is that it's only released irregularly or once a year or whatever, and you get this great story crafted the way you're describing.
Yeah.
Does that mean that there's no more room for floppies?
If they got back to
is that controversial?
Well, no, I think if they got back to a point where they were hiring freaking fanboys, right? Every fanboy who's a writer has ideas for, you know, for characters. Everyone has their own. Well, not everyone, but they all have their own Spider-Man stories. Or geez, wouldn't it be great if the X-Men did this? And rather than hiring someone someone just because for whatever reason, just rather than hiring people who don't know and love these characters and have been dreaming about doing stories with them. Like Kevin Grievous is a great example. Kevin Grievous loves this stuff, right? He loves it. He's like uber fanboy. So if you gave Kevin Grievous like a book or something, he would just be chomping at the bit and drooling to write stories for these characters. And so you'd have that drive and that inspiration to do great stories, and then you just tack a good artist on there, or a great artist, and you've got something noteworthy. And you could publish it monthly, but that's the thing. It's like, you know what? Have a bevy of writers who are fanboys, fangirls. I don't care what their sex is. I don't care what anything is. I just want good books.
Right.
But they have to love it. If they're coming in to X-Men the way Obama came into the presidency, sorry, I'm going there, saying, we're 2 weeks away from fundamentally changing America. Dude, if you want to come in here and fundamentally change something that the entire fandom loves, you're not a fan. You shouldn't be on this book. Yeah. There is a legacy and a responsibility to the history of these characters and these books that should be, I mean, not fan service per se, but you want to think of the fans. You don't want to crap all over your fandom to push your own political agenda.
Well, that's the problem. I mean, because I love that you're saying those things, and I definitely agree that I've
never shied away from saying things.
No. It's not that. You know what it is? It's because like I said, man. I also believe that we should speak freely, and this is my channel, so I'm letting you guys say your points, and that's fine. That's my prerogative, right? So I'm happy that you're saying what you want to say here. My bigger point, though, is that we're going back again to the ethos of what Comicsgate is, right? That this is a movement about producing quality products, and not just producing the quality product, but also considering the customer as the goal. That's what drives me crazy. Coming from again, if I say capitalist, everybody gets mad, but that's what it is. It's a capitalist perspective on business. Business is only capitalist. There's no way you can have a socialist business. It doesn't work.
No,
that sounds racist.
Socialist comics would, by their very nature, simply be propaganda.
Right. So all you have left is let's tell good stories. Let's make some good money at it, because if I can make money at it, because here's how I come at this whole thing. One of my big dreams is not even necessarily to create comics, as it is to it's a bigger thing for me. I want to be able to find a way to create a business. This is what I happen to be good at, and I thought, well, I'm good at drawing these things. I also want to help people like that. I happen to know a lot of people that are, especially in the Tampa Bay area, and then it's in every city. There's a lot of homelessness, and there are guys who've come out of prison. They need some work, and I'm like, I see these guys getting left behind, and I think, man, what a great opportunity if I could build a business. So then I start thinking, well, that's what we want to do. That's part of what we call the American dream, is to build something that you can not necessarily just pass on. I don't look at it as that, but we can share it in the way that it makes sense. Let's get people jobs. Let's get people involved. Let's get people working. How about these artists and these writers who, like, I love it when I hear Zach say that these people are getting jobs because they're because of their skin color or because of their race or religion or political view. And there's all these writers who are not working. That's a strong argument to me, because those guys are out of work and they're perfectly good at writing, but because they're not controversial enough and they're not creating, you know, I don't know what their needle is that they want to move is, but it's not doing anything for their business, and it seems to be hurting their business. To your point, Nasser, you mentioned, was it Comic-Con?
Yeah.
You know, I was going to ask you about that more, because I think it's important that people note that there's stuff happening out there that is not being, we only get the propaganda, is the best term, of the industry from Twitter and the websites that support these companies. But when you go to look at the numbers, and so thank God that we have those numbers to review under this capitalist system, because those numbers matter when you're trying to make a business work. And everybody wants something for free, but how can you continue to produce it like that? Anyway, so what's driving me crazy is that, all right, you guys are making money and still producing garbage. How that's insincere.
They're not making money. Their sales are so low and the pay is so low. They don't even want to try. They just want to, I don't know, they just want to fail. They don't even want to give it a shot.
But that's crazy though. Wow.
They have I don't know, this is all going to be ballpark, but probably the top, 30 or 40, the top half of roughly the books that Marvel is producing are paying for the lower half to be produced. Because it costs, at professional levels, it costs $15,000 roughly to produce a comic book. So when you've got books at Marvel selling 8, 10, even 15,000 copies, you're borderline, if not losing money on all of those. Yeah, granted, they do have a handful of books selling, 100,000, maybe like 2 or 3 any given month.
Hey, hold up, I gotta mute myself.
Yeah,
that's fine.
I always find that to be the best option for you, Nasser.
I love the banter. That's my favorite thing about this group.
Nasser's my whipping boy. He loves it.
Yeah, I hear him.
But yeah, that we come from an age where if a book was selling less than 100,000 copies, Marvel would have canceled it, and now that's their top, only their top 3, maybe 4 books are breaking that level, and so
right.
Whatever they're doing it wrong.
Right. So that's why again, I'm sharing with the people that are visiting here today, and hopefully they'll consider this a channel they want to subscribe to and like, and then because I like talking about this kind of stuff, the business side of it, because then it makes sense why things get done and why they don't get done. Because when I was just a consumer, when I was only consuming, and I always tell my kids that you're either going to be a consumer or a producer, but one way or the other, you got to figure out where you stand. But when I was just consuming the product, we have these conversations, me and my buddies at dinner tables and stuff, and I just hate talking and then not having any answers, because all we end up with is like, oh, they just don't care, and that can't be true. Somebody cares, but if you have a particular mission in mind, that will dictate what's going to end up happening to that product. So that's why I'm a little, I'm weird by the whole thing, because for a long time I'm thinking we're trying to make money, right? These companies want to make money, right? Why is Superman have a weird lip in this last movie? I don't understand why he does that. Why is he killing people? Why is he not killing people? So anyway, I wish that there was a clearer thing. So, and I think what it is, I think I found it in some of these views. So that's why, to Lafayette's point, he's asked about not having politics involved. That's unfortunately those politics seem to be making the decisions, or are considered in making the choices. So it's not just because someone's stupid. Ryan Johnson's not stupid. No one gets to that level because they're dumb. Nobody gets to Kathleen Kennedy's level because she's an idiot. We like to say that, but those are empty I mean, we could have that opinion all day long, but I suspect it's not an opinion. It's just people insulting each other. Reality is, am I right or am I wrong?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it can't be because they're just completely, what's the word I'm looking for? Incompetent. There's something else going on. And so, all right. So let's go ahead and move past that, right? So we know that there's a problem. It seems to be generated. I agree with you. I think that there's an intent to use this product for propaganda. But here's one of the things that I feel like is a challenge to that view. The people that they're selling it to, I mean, who's buying these books anymore? What are the numbers on that? And why are they using comics as the medium for that when it seems to have such low readership? Or is that changing, in your opinion?
Well, it's often said culture is downstream from politics, right?
Mm-hmm.
The feeding ground of Hollywood for the past 10, 15 years, 20 years, for the biggest blockbuster, the biggest cultural events in Hollywood have been comic books.
Mm-hmm.
So they are targeting, and I don't know if it's targeting is the right word, because this did come about seemingly organically, because Tom Brevoort has been at Marvel for ever.
Mm-hmm.
I can't even remember when I worked for Tom on Hulk in the last century.
Right. Yeah, he's not new. He's not new.
Right. Yeah, he's not new. So this what happens is a weeding out over time of the unlike political ideology, right? And then the strengthening of the worldview. I honestly think this has a lot to do with Obama. And I'm not being paranoid or anything. But when Obama came to office, a lot of people on the left thought, well, that's it, game over, we have won. And they got really bold and they got really brave. And I understand it, because when Trump won, I got really bold and I got really brave, right? So
right.
It works on the flip side as well. And they started pushing, and they were more likely or willing to just hire people based on whatever their politics du jour were, or whatever their identity politics were, or whatever reason beyond the capitalist foundation of merit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they started hiring these people and just and letting them free and saying, hey, and I had this conversation with my brother where I was saying that this was all propaganda, and he's like, well, what if they just believe it? And I stopped and I was like, well, that's kind of the problem. It's not so much that they believe what they're doing, or they believe what they're writing or whatever. It's that they believe it to a degree. And this is how I sort of define SJW, right? A lot of people throw that term around, and it doesn't really have a concrete meaning, so I have my own definition for it.
Okay.
To me, SJW is a person who is so ideologically cemented into place that they firmly believe that anyone who disagrees with what they believe is either crazy, stupid, or malevolent, right? And so if you do earnestly come from this perspective, then writing what you believe into your comics with zero regard for those crazy, stupid, evil people is a natural course of events. Right?
Right.
I mean, why wouldn't you if you did believe this? And you've met people, you talk to people who, when you talk to them, you understand that this is where they're coming from, right? Nothing you can say could crack that shell, because nothing you say can they consider coming from a place of reason or truth or just honest disagreement. You have to be crazy, stupid, or evil to believe this stuff. And so yes, it is propaganda from a rational perspective, but it is being written from an irrational point of view, not taking into consideration that anyone might disagree with you and still be a good person in doing so.
So let me read this comment on the chat here. I'm going to try to read everybody's chat as much as possible. I know you guys. This is one of the benefits of having a small, intimate collection. I can read all the chat for everyone. But I am in particular, my buddy Lafayette here. He's a buddy of mine, carries over from Instagram. Lafayette says, all books can be seen as having a political side, but it's also from the reader's perspective. I get books for the art and stories secondary and never read into them more than silly stories. Okay, fair enough. But let me ask you this, Mike, because I know that this is, I guess, in a way, putting you on a hot seat, right? But no, I'm sure, based on what I know of you, I'm sure you don't mind talking about this. You are a Christian.
Absolutely.
And you have very specific views. Now,
I do.
I'm going to use what I heard Ethan say. He who should not be named expressed a comment. I'm going to leave that for you guys to discover on your own, people. A comment about a particular view that I thought was, well, you know, he made a comment about Christianity that I actually thought was a sincere comment about wanting everyone to be a Christian. But that's because in our faith, the goal is to proselytize and to share the message that we think is going to save their lives, right? So we, like Doug would say, by necessity, we're required to communicate that message in hopes that everyone would consider the gospel and change their mind.
Let me go a step further. Regardless what you believe, if you don't believe that other people, that the whole world should believe what you believe, then you don't really believe it.
That's a fair point. I think that's fair, especially if it's as important as a particular religious belief, especially if the stakes are as high as Christians claim it is, right?
Yeah.
So here's the thing. How do we, here are you are a Christian, and do you put any of your own values into your work? And if you do, are you directly being Christian about it? Are you alluding to ideas? Are you like what Tolkien said? Or do you see yourself as the sub-creator? What are your thoughts on that?
That's an interesting way to put it. Yes, my values will always come through. My particular faith and my particular politics, I don't know, at some point something might come up, but I won't force anything into the story unless it is organic to the story, because that's just bad writing.
Okay. And would you say that that's the difference between what you feel? And by the way, I realize some of the
because
terms.
I sincerely believe they are purposefully trying to push the envelope to move the needle in the direction, to move the culture in their direction, and nobody's stopping them. And they're probably being encouraged, knowing who their editors are. I'm pretty sure they're being encouraged to that end.
And I'm saying this because it could be argued that if you're doing that, how is that different than what they're doing? And I think the answer is what you're alluding to, is that you're not going to let it happen at the expense of the narrative. Whereas it seems like some of these stories being executed, for example, over at a Marvel, they seem to be doing it at the expense of the narrative and at the expense of their customer base, right? Because the customer is saying, we don't want that kind of story. Just by and large, if with the money, the sales numbers bear that out, and yet they continue to push it, right? So at the end of the day, I'm trying to make the distinction for some of the people who may be listening, that because those are the kinds of arguments I've heard in the past, where you say, well, aren't you doing the same thing? Well, aren't you doing this? Well, yeah, in a sense, but I'm also a business person. I want my stories to be layered. I want them to be, you know, many of the concepts that I've been wanting to push since I decided that I wanted to create stories have always had, because I feel that way. I feel like I feel, to your point, this is an important message to me. Now, how I convey that message, I think it's up to the transmitter, and how it's received is up to the recipient. So the phrase, "Let him who has ears to hear, let him hear." I like that. I like that. Jesus didn't communicate everything so plainly, and then sometimes he did, right? So I like to think of these stories as allegorical in nature, and can still be enjoyed at any level, even if you don't agree with the perspective. Like, I don't believe in Buddhism necessarily, although I really like Buddhists because they make me comfortable all the time. But but Lucas used a lot of that kind of imagery and concept in his films, but I still like Star Wars. Doesn't change my appreciation for that, because I can, like Lafayette said, I can put into it my own idea. He wasn't on the nose about it. Would you say that that's a good solution to some of this talk?
Yeah, I mean that's sort of what I'm saying by
quiet.
I love it.
By saying I'm not forcing things, and yeah, allegory is if you want to like, people always say, oh, X-Men has always been political. Say no, X-Men has always been allegorical.
Right.
You can the great thing about allegory, particular to the X-Men, is that any downtrodden group or person can feel like it speaks to them.
Right.
You're not saying, well, this, is this one particular political issue targeted at this one particular political group at this one particular time. It's like sticking it's like sticking a president. It shoehorns your, not shoehorns, but it limits your audience understanding to the moment. It doesn't create an evergreen product, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So allegory, that's fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I would encourage it if it makes sense, and you're not talking down to your reader, and you're not insulting your reader for not believing the same as you do, which they do all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's the problem. I think that a lot of the people that have these type of arguments or feel like this, this is this is really the crux of all of the stuff everyone's frustrated about. When you're frustrated, for those of you who may be aligned with so somebody asked earlier, what does SJW mean? Social justice warrior. It's an interesting term, because I think all of us really, it's hard. I hate using those terms because I care about people in my community. I care about the homeless. I care about the widows. I care about the orphans.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I was trying to say about, I'm utilizing the system that we live in, the capitalist system, to do exactly that. Is what I think is the ultimate benefit when you have a business. When everything's free, all that money goes away. So I'm not going to get into all that, but because it's such a hard thing to unpack in a few minutes here. But I think, though, that I believe in social justice in that way, that I care about the people that are in my sphere of influence, in my world. So I feel like they've co-opted something that is not fair for them to take. And so now we are saying, because I think we were kind of partly guilty of that. We helped create that by using that as a slur. And so now if we even have any kind of agreement with that idea, even if it's limited or not, now we can't use it. Just like Comicsgate is a slur now, and that's why it was so important to defend it the way it was defended for what it was, even if the outcome was bloody, if you will. So it's important that, because these words have meaning now, whether we like it or not, terms are being used all over the place, and we need to just be careful. So I like to try to define the terms. I've heard you say that before too. Let's define these terms so that we can be clear about what we mean by these things. And so if people come across my channel here, or they hear us talking, they know that we are not Nazis. We're far from that. That's not at all what I am aligning myself with. We are not racists. And not that there aren't some people who may be racist. I don't know what's going on in everybody's head, but I will tell you this: I'm not going to support something that I think is that way, and I think that's what everybody wants to do. And to Nasser's point, let's just focus on making great things, right? So that's the other part of this, is that let's stop. If you're a creator out there and you feel like you have something to contribute, and all we're doing is sitting in our cubicles or in our workplaces complaining about what's going on, I feel if you have the capacity and the ability to do this, instead of complaining, you should do something about it. You should make a change. And instead of trying to change what's already there, which I think is counterproductive, and that's why everyone's getting upset. Spider-Man is Peter Parker, but then they want to change it for a variety of political reasons, and it just comes across as insincere. I was talking to a group the other night, and I said that when I heard that Captain America was going to be Sam Wilson, I have no problem with Sam Wilson as a character. I love Falcon. I wish that he was given something more important to do than to put on the old white guy's pajamas. That's how I put it, because I do care about that community, and I do think that there's more stuff we can do with characters that are Black or Asian or whatever. It's just that we're not very creative about it. So be creative. It's just too easy to just put them into this costume. And I think, to your point, I think it was done just to say, hey, look, this is what's hot now, and they took it, rearranged it, and say, see, it's the same thing, just to kind of perpetuate their cause. So it never comes across sincere. Nobody seems to like it, blah, blah, blah. Let me just read some more of these chats. I'm sorry. Sometimes I ramble, and I apologize for that, because I am working on something here and I keep forgetting. Let's see. I'm going to go further back here. So Tyler Nickel here says, I gave some of my alternate comics to my little sister, and if you're looking into comic companies with some titles for kids, that's a great idea. Some of their titles are for kids for sure. Let's see. So Lafayette says, what happened to SWLJ's is that Last Jedi is that Rian Johnson bet J.J. Abrams that he could make a crappy Star Wars and still make $1 billion, and he was right. Crap. Zach Hawkins says, Tyler, did you happen to hear Peter talking about doing an Alterna Ween project so you could get a bunch of kid-friendly comics to hand out instead of candy? I'll be in on that just to leave them around. That's interesting. I'm getting that voice from Tug. Zach Hawkins, where people can pick them up, park benches, etc., just to get the word out about this company. Tyler says, that's awesome. My crypt is a tailor made for something like that. Let's see. Lafayette says, best writer in comics is Millar, and Kirkman is close second. What do you think about that, Mike?
Kirkman, yeah. I'm not big on Millar.
No?
Really?
Kirkman, no. Millar, yes.
Whoa.
Oh. Okay, Mike.
Uh-oh.
Mike, I actually got a question for you. Yeah. How come the gutters only have how come they're not all black yet? How come you put a little in then stopped?
Because I use them to tailor the point on my brush.
Oh.
While I'm doing it, and not waste ink. So I'm getting two birds with one stone, and then afterwards I go in and I fill up the gutters.
Gotcha. That's been bothering me since you got on.
You just crushed Nasser. He was like, there's got to be some really impressive reason.
I really did think so. I was like, there's something up.
Sorry, chum. That's not the way it works. Yeah, no, Kirkman, I liked Invincible when it first came out. I really liked Invincible when it first came out. And I liked Walking Dead when it first came out. About the fourth graphic novel into Walking Dead, I realized that he was just spinning wheels. And so I tapped out of that. And then I grabbed one of the later Invincible super trades, the big ones, and I started to read it, and I'm like, it's just, I think maybe he just doesn't have time, but maybe it's the same thing with that monthly grind, right?
No, I don't think so.
Your inspiration is gone. No, because you're a fanboy, Nasser. You're a fanboy. Whatever you get, you're gonna like. So I'm not a fanboy. I'm objective about it. And
no, I actually don't like all of
writing on
Kirkman's stuff,
Invincible
but I don't think it's the monthly grind that's the problem.
Oh, that's the argument.
Yeah.
What do you think is the problem?
For Kirkman,
nothing is perfect.
no, I think, well, it's different for each of his books, because Walking Dead was good for a while, but then it's been so repetitive. Like, it's on issue 185 maybe, and I think after like 100, it's just been like the same old thing. Like, they find a new group, and then the new group's evil, and then people die, and then they leave, and they met like 2 new people, and then they find a new group, and then the group is evil, and it just goes on and on. Invincible, I don't have a problem with any of Invincible. Sure that every run has a few boring issues, but maybe you just picked it up. That trade you picked up randomly was probably just like a bad spot. If you read the rest, it's all great. Oblivion Song, it's okay. I didn't like that die thing that just came out. He put some SJW dialogue in there. Something about like I forgot how he said it, but I'm not even gonna try. But it was just, trust me, that die book was cringy, and I think I have it around here somewhere. I could probably find that line. I don't know where I put it though, but it was terrible.
I actually like Oblivion Song a lot.
I'm still reading it, but
yeah.
I think some parts are kind of, I guess, predictable.
Yeah. You know what, though? That's all. This goes back to, I think, our conversation earlier about, is there room for stuff like that? I think sometimes there is, though. I think there's room for the. I think that the product has evolved to where we want, not everything can be Dark Knight Returns or Shakespeare, comic book Shakespeare. But so there's room for things that are just escapist and that, and I think, though, that there still needs to be craft in it, which is problematic. That's where I think that the bigger challenges are for me, is how to support something that, because that's why I stopped buying comics almost altogether, and I mainly buy for artists. I don't really even buy for stories anymore.
Oh, same here. I mostly buy for the artist.
Yeah. So, but that one in particular, though, because I've heard Zach criticize art styles like that. I actually like that look. That guy is really strong, a good storyteller. But I can also appreciate that there's a lot of other stuff going on that maybe doesn't feel so hot. As far as the look and aesthetic of things, there was a book called Spire that I was really attracted to, even though I've only read a couple of issues and I could never finish it. I never got any more, and it was probably not consistent with my worldview in terms of what it was, but it looked pretty cool. So I like that kind of minimalist style of art from time to time. I just can't always. Sometimes it's just, this is where I get frustrated when people are like, oh, it's got to be cool because of this, or because it represents this idea. And I'm like, that's what Zach pointed out to me so much in those early videos that I saw, like, oh, that is garbage. Why am I even looking at that? Like, I didn't like America Chavez at all. I didn't like that. And I like Quinones too, but I feel like he's rushing too. And maybe to your point, it's that monthly thing too. I thought his Howard the Duck stuff was pretty cool, but I didn't care for that stuff though.
Right.
Look, there was some weirdness in there. I think the monthly grind is a problem though, Nasser. I'm just responding to your comment.
Maybe it's because I don't draw, and I wouldn't know how difficult it is to put out 20 pages in a month. But I mean, it does sound tough, because I mean, if it takes a whole day to do one page and you got 30 days to do it, plus if you're doing the cover, yeah, that is tough. But as far as writing, I think the biggest problem is I can't stand Tom King Batman, and it's because he writes for the trade. Some of these people drag it out. They want some long epic. It doesn't always have to be that way. Like, give it a, I don't know. I just rather it be just normal writing. You could tell whenever they drag it out, and it's like part 1 of 6, and sure, there are good 6-part stories, but most of these ones today could be wrapped up in 1 to 2 issues. or it would be something that you could just put into like a, I don't know, a 48-page annual or something. Like,
so that brings me, okay, I'm glad you said that, because as you were saying that, I'm thinking to myself, I don't know, maybe it's not the monthly thing. Maybe what hurt the monthly product is that it became the construction of a trade paperback. Maybe that's our problem. What do you think about that?
Well,
or using that format for that purpose? Because I had no problem reading the old Spider-Man stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I mentioned this last night about writing. When you write, you try to write in arcs. You try to write the overall overarching story arc. So say you have a 6 or a 12 issue story arc, but then you also have to write the individual issue story arc, which, granted, I'm going to have a hard time with Lone Star because it was written as a longer story. It's written very. My story breakdown is actually more along the lines of a movie than it is comic books. So you're going to get that. I do have, good stuff happening in each chapter, but it is part of an overall story arc. So I don't know. It's hard because you do, if you're writing for the story rather than the chapter, it does take on a different flavor, but it's not like that makes it bad writing.
No, I agree with that. I think though that's what I'm suggesting is that I don't disagree with you at all. I think you're just describing the other side of it. You were writing your story in that arc form.
Well, not to interrupt you, but here's another thing about when you take a story that could be in an annual, or it just should take 2 issues, and you stretch it out to 6.
Oh yeah,
you end up with a lot of filler. So when these people write for the trades, you get boring. That's why a lot of comics these days, you get like 3 pages of talking heads, and I hate that because it's a visual medium, and the last thing I want is to have filler dialogue. It's fine if it's cool dialogue, if it's something real meaningful between 2 characters I care about, but not when it's like, okay, now we have to have 4 pages of they're walking home from school and they got the quirky teenage girl dialogue, and it's just, they're obviously just to kill time, and you could tell the artist does not care to draw something that boring, and you could tell it's something the writer just threw together in 5 minutes just to waste pages. I hate that. So when you write for the trade, it's really dragged out. You get like 2 pages of cool moments, and then you get a bunch of filler, and then you get the cliffhanger, and then the next issue starts with a ton of filler before you pick up where the previous issue left off. I hate that, and I'm not a real wordy person, so I just try to get right to the point.
I'm gonna have like 3 pages of them walking down the street talking.
Yeah, and I'm sure you're not doing filler. I'm sure it's something meaningful.
Right. That's what I mean.
Relationships. It's not just,
Well, that's what I mean when I say that you designed that to be told as an arc. You designed it to be a more meaningful story. I think the problem is that you're not trying to sell a monthly book, even if you decide you want to chop this up into monthly components. I think what Nasser's pointing out is that when it's written like that, that's what I mean and that's why I corrected myself, because I'm like, well, Hellboy, I enjoy it the way it is, but I think it's also good because it was developed as a full story and then presented in these chapters, whereas they're just trying to, their scope of their stories I don't think are strong enough to maintain a trade, but they're forcing it. It's almost like when a good television show on Netflix has 20 something episodes versus just a good solid 8 episodes or 9 episodes. Like that's like Daredevil was like that. Like, man, it was such a good compact story, and you can tell when they're like, oh, it's getting a lot of viewership, let's add a couple more episodes, and then you get lost in that. To me, that's where I would rather get the concise version, or plan it to be an epic story. I mean, Star Wars, or one of my favorite movies, I always put it as one movie, is Back to the Future, all 3 parts. But when you watch the whole thing,
that drove me nuts. Back to the Future pissed me off so much when it got to the end of the movie. It said "to be continued."
Yeah. But if you watch it all together, it's such a satisfying watch. The arcs are all there. Same thing with Indiana Jones. I love watching them also in that way, like one big story. And I actually have an interesting take on that, but I'll share that another time. But it feels so. There's an episodic thing, right? The episodes, the serialized version, that I think is still good. But the problem is they're trying to be. This is what I'm trying to say. Let me fix myself. So I'm kind of dumb. They're trying to be serialized. They're not prepared to do the long form version. They're trying to create a long form out of what they plan to be serialized. Hey, give me a second, guys. I'll be right back. Someone's at my door.
Yep.
All right.
Off real quick.
So, Nasser, you're just wrong, okay? You're just wrong.
Mike, I can't believe you're using a ruler for that. I could do that freehand.
Right.
So what you got going on today?
I'm gonna try to call AT&T at some point and get my broadband sped up so that people can see better what I'm working on while I'm chatting. Kids will love it too, because that means the games will play faster.
Yeah, and then they play while you stream, and then it still makes your video come out fuzzy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure that will be the case.
Yeah, I don't got much going on today. I got to get my siblings from school at like 3, and huh?
Oh, hold on, it's my wife. Yes. Hi. Seriously? She's not feeling well because she didn't sleep. Okay. I'm back.
Hey, gentlemen, I'm going to have to bail out.
Yeah, I got to go pick up my daughter. Apparently, she's not feeling well.
Yeah, I'm going to try to plan these to be scheduled them for a certain amount of time, and then I'll try to do a better job in the future to give us a nice little thing to talk about. And I'll probably do that when I mention the link in the chat. I'll put in some sort of topic so we can all talk about it that way, so we can get the most out of our time. But I really appreciate you guys coming on and joining me. It warms my heart that you took the new guy and you supported him today. It makes me feel good.
Don't cry.
By the way, guys, all you guys that are in the chat or watching right now, there's in the description I have the links to both the IndieGoGos for Mike S. Miller and Nasser Rabadi here. There's the links are there, so you can go to that and support that. If you enjoyed that discussion and you want to support those creators,
my
go ahead and do
IndieGoGo's
that.
already over.
Yours
thank you
for Stardust.
Yeah,
it says it's funding.
No, it's been over.
All right, well then go look at it, you people. and wish that you had bought it when it was available. I also have on there my own Instagram. My Patreon is there for those of you guys who want to support me further on Patreon. Just for $1 a month, you get backstage access for my stuff. There's also a tip jar there for me there as well. So if you guys want to support a brother, hook a brother up. And then my own IndieGoGo Black and Red series Artbook. And let me just give you a quick update on that, guys. It's going really well. Let me see where it is. Crud. Let me just type in Elliot Fernandez because that's the easiest way for me to do it.
And everybody in the chat, make sure you hit that like button and share this channel out on all your social media. Let's get this channel blowed up so you can get some. Yeah, you're pretty close to 1,000 already.
Yeah, blowed up so we can say word up. Yeah, guys, look, I'm at 510% funding, guys. I really appreciate everybody in this group and the community is helping out. We're at 3824 of a $750 goal. So you guys are awesome. And you guys you fellow creators are part of the process, and I appreciate you guys.
All right,
so everybody have a great day. God bless you guys. We'll talk very soon once again. Peace.
All right, brother.
See ya.
Good to talk to you.